I'm Brian Fisher from the California Academy of Sciences, and welcome to the Madagascar Biodiversity Center. If you haven't had a chance to have a brief tour of our center, you're welcome to stay afterwards for a tour. One of our objectives, which really grew out of a passion for insects in general, was to develop a way to monitor all insects across Madagascar. And since then, we've also begun to apply that knowledge, building on the tradition of edible insects, to try to develop novel insect protein-based solutions for food security in Madagascar. Those kind of two applied areas are the goal and mission of the Madagascar Biodiversity Center. But today, we'll be sharing with you a real focus and path about how Madagascar can develop a monitoring program for its remaining natural habitats. Today, we'll have a series of talks that will introduce you to phase one of our projects called the Insect Biome Atlas. You'll learn about how we and why we set up our traps across Madagascar. You'll learn about how we set about analyzing that diversity. And then we'll introduce phase two, called Life Plan, in which we expand beyond just insects to mammals, because mammals' well-being depends on those insects. So we'll talk about images captured on cameras, to audio moths, recording sounds, and also this incredible diversity of fungi, a really unknown fungi. And speaking of unknown, we have to also mention that really we are just at the beginning of understanding biodiversity. When you talk about biodiversity, you may be impressed by giant books about the biodiversity of Madagascar. If you look at this new version of the Natural History Guide, edited by Goodman and others, you'll learn that we know a lot about the mammals, the terrestrial mammals of Madagascar, the birds and the plants. But even though the chapter on insects is the largest chapter in this book, one thing is clear. We know almost nothing about the insects of Madagascar. So if we want to really understand insects, which are the glue that holds these forests together, we really need to think about a new way to understand and document biodiversity. What is biodiversity? How do you measure it? How often do you have to measure it? All those are questions essential to developing a national monitoring program for Madagascar. Our long goal is to launch phase 3, in which we build on phase 1, IBA, phase 2, Life Plan, in which we'll have a national program where we're monitoring the forest, understanding how humans are impacting the forest, understanding how climate change is maybe changing, so we can better manage those remaining forests. But at the same time, we'll have also the first real glimpse of diversity in Madagascar. Without insects, without understanding even the magnitude of that diversity, we cannot hope to manage and understand how systems and ecosystems work. Insects are the food for the animals. The well-being of all the animals of Madagascar are dependent really on the insects. In this book, you realize that we can't even predict how many insects there are in Madagascar. And that's shocking. We talk about biodiversity, but we don't even know to the magnitude of that diversity. And you'll see that in this study, for the first time, we're going to be showing results that reveal, for the first time, the magnitude of the diversity of flying insects in Madagascar. By building on that tradition of taxonomy for the last 250 years and applying genetic tools to really open up an index, a concrete, measurable index for biodiversity in Madagascar. Now today we're going to have a series of talks you'll have a chance to meet each of the key leaders in this project. After each talk, we're going to have one question as we transition to the next speaker. But at the end, we'll have a period for questions and discussion. At the end of that discussion, we'll break for some snacks and drinks. Some of those snacks will benefit from the insect protein farming going on next door. We'll have some special treats for you if you want to experience some of your traditions of edible insects. And then we have a bonus talk where you'll come back here for those people interested in learning in detail about the methods, both of the field and, more importantly, the methods of doing barcoding yourself here in Madagascar. Our long-term goal is to, as this project progresses, is to train more and more steps such that here in Madagascar, for phase 3, as much of the steps are done here in Madagascar. In other words, we're bringing along the intellect development and mentoring of the students and scientists here in Madagascar to enable that process to happen here as much as possible. One of the great aims of MBC is that mentoring. And we're lucky that we have a great leader of that team of students, Tanjana, in the back row there. If you're interested in working with MBC, please talk to Tanjana. And that cohort training that happens here is really, for me personally, one of the great things that I'm proud of that MBC is doing here in Madagascar is that training of Malagasy scientists. We hope that the students here are some of the best trained scientists in Madagascar. Also, just so you know, there's a take-home message pamphlet that summarizes all the important results, goals, and the future of insect monitoring in Madagascar. So take this home. You can share it with others, and it really is a summary of these results. And I must say, this team has worked hard for this last 10 days preparing this kind of debriefing of the results of this project. And I'm very proud that this team has come all the way here to Madagascar to share the results. Results that aren't published yet, results that have not been distributed beyond this room. And I really appreciate the hard work. And I also want to take the time to thank Park Tsimbazaza, which is our host, in a sense, for all the work that MBC does. We've been here since 2004. I must also thank the Minister of the Forest for their collaboration, Madagascar National Parks, and of course, all the NGOs where we are working and helping us manage those traps. You'll learn about how complex it is to run a project at 50 sites across Madagascar and make sure something happens the same way every week. It's quite a challenge. So without further ado, let me introduce you the renowned Fred Ronquist from the Swedish Natural History Museum, who will introduce the IBA project to us and why it was started. So thank you. Fred.
Thank you very much, Brian.